this computer. All right.
I just want to take a look at road construction.
I think we're getting more CHIPS money this year. It's up
Yeah, I
about
think
like
we should be adding
20% or something.
pot from ourselves too, so we can get some of the stuff done quicker.
Tom is upstairs with Frank, the chief, talking about the fire contract before we discuss it later. So we can open this organizational meeting at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business is public comment. Okay, moving on to the organizational meeting segment. We're starting with appointments of attorney and health officer. I hereby appoint Tom Peterson, village attorney, and Joanne McDonough, our health officer, and reappoint Dr. Lori Naranch and Daniel Curtis to a term of 5 years on the ZBA. Now, as far as the resolutions go, I think it would be quicker if I read them and move them, then get a second rather.
Sure.
So be it resolved that the village board of Round Lake approves Mayor Putman's appointment of village attorney, village health officer, and PB ZBA reappointments resolved by the mayor.
Second.
Discussion. Aye. Assignments, Matt Coldrick, deputy mayor. Tina Alviar, LoSAP, which is length of service awards program / fire department, and Tom Bergen, PB and ZB liaison. Auditorium, we're going to leave open now until we settle a few matters regarding the auditorium. Mayor assignments. Be it resolved that the village board of Round Lake approves Mayor Putman's trustees assignments as noted above, resolved by the mayor. Seconded by.
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Just in terms of leaving the auditorium liaison vacant, we're going, the plan is to, once we get all this stuff straightened out with policies, to then appoint somebody.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll vote Tom,
Yes.
Heidi, Matt,
Yes.
Tina, and Gary.
Yes. Oh, okay. Now the exciting stuff. Meeting dates. Be it resolved by the Round Lake Board of Trustees that the regular meeting of the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees will be held on the third Wednesday of each month. Be it resolved by the Round Lake Board of Trustees that a workshop meeting of the Round Lake Village Board of Trustees will be held on the first Wednesday of each month as needed. Be it also resolved that when a special or emergency meeting of the Village Board of Trustees is necessary, the village clerk would be required to contact each member individually by phone, in person, or by email, if receipt is confirmed, to schedule a meeting. Be it further resolved that the next organizational meeting will be held on Wednesday, December 7th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Resolved by the mayor. Second.
I'll second.
Discussion.
All right.
Official newspaper. Be it resolved that the village official newspaper shall be the Daily Gazette. Resolved by the mayor. Seconded by.
Second.
Discussion.
All right.
Aye.
Regarding the Gazette, could we get a paper copy of that?
Mhm.
And digital subscription, maybe combination. Payment of claims. Whereas the Round Lake Board of Trustees has determined to authorize payment in advance of audit of claims for public utility service, postage, freight express charges, debt service payments, and contractual expenses. And whereas all such claims must be presented at the next regular meeting of the village board for audit. And whereas the claimant and the officer incurring or approving the claim are jointly and severally liable for any amount the Board of Trustees disallows. Now therefore be it resolved, Section 1, that the Board of Trustees authorizes payment in advance of audit of claims for public utility service, postage, freight express charge, debt service, and contractual expenses. All such claims must be presented at the next regular meeting for audit, and the claimant and the officer incurring or approving the claim are jointly and severally liable for any amount the Board of Trustees disallows. Section 2, that this resolution is effective immediately. Resolved by the mayor. Second.
Second.
Tina? Discussion?
All
Aye.
Mileage rate for 2022. Whereas the Round Lake Board of Trustees has determined to pay a fixed rate for mileage as reimbursement to village officers and employees who use their personal automobiles while performing their official village duties. Now therefore be it resolved, Section 1, that the Round Lake Board of Trustees will approve reimbursement to such officer and employee at the rate of 56 cents per mile for 2022, same as 2021. Section 2, that this resolution is effective immediately. Resolved by the mayor.
Second.
Discussion?
Makes sense in line with what the
I-
IRS reimbursement rate
I
is.
think it is the IRS reimbursement.
Okay, I don't know that, I know that they said 2021 rate. I don't know if they said 2022 yet.
2021 was 50, the
56
same.
also. So
But I,
if it does change for whatever reason due to inflation, is this something we can visit?
certainly.
All right.
Vote on.
Aye.
All right, deposit of village money. Whereas the Round Lake Board of Trustees has determined that village law section 4-412, parent 3, parent 2, requires the designation of banks or trust companies for deposit of all village monies. Now therefore be it resolved, Section 1, that the Board of Trustees designates the following institutions as depositories of all monies received by the village clerk, receiver of taxes, and treasurer. The Adirondack Trust Company, 473 Broadway, Saratoga Springs, New York, 12866, Section 2. This resolution is effective immediately. Resolved by mayor. Second. Discussion?
Vote on.
Aye.
Training conferences and meetings. Whereas there is to be held during the coming official year, certain meetings, conferences, and training schools. Whereas attendance by certain municipal officials and employees at one or more of these meetings, conferences, or schools benefits the municipality. Now therefore be it resolved, Section 1, that the officers and employees are authorized to attend any and all meetings, conferences, or schools as approved by the mayor and board of trustees. Section 2, the resolution is effective immediately. Resolved by the mayor.
Question.
Yes.
I'll
The,
second.
Discussion?
Officers, employees are authorized to attend any meetings approved by the Board of Trustees. So why do we need to have a resolution that provides that these will be approved by resolution? Also, we meet once a month. Is there a need for perhaps some more flexibility so we can act more speedily? Maybe we want to say mayor or board of trustees.
This is just carryover verbiage from past years. I'm certainly not opposed to that.
Yeah, I know. Before.
Change and to or. So motion to approve with that edit. Second.
I'll second.
Vote. Tom?
Yes.
Tim? I'm sorry, no board. Hi. Yeah.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes. 8-hour workday. Be it resolved that the Village Board of Round Lake, location code 40453, established an 8-hour workday for the village attorney appointed and will report his record of activities to the New York State and local retirement system, resolved by the mayor, seconded by
Second.
discussion. This is something that the retirement system
Yeah,
requires.
requires.
We do this every year.
Have we done this before?
Yeah.
specifically?
At least 3 years, I remember.
I just.
I think it was a change about 3 years ago when it came
Yeah,
into
okay,
effect.
okay.
Vote all
Aye.
Policies. Be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees will continue to follow all existing policies that were readopted earlier this year until such time when the Village Board reviews and amends them. Resolved by Mayor.
Second.
Discussion?
The only outstanding one is the personnel.
That's correct. That's a
And
bear.
all terms that were added to the
You're right,
original.
And that-
Oh, you send it around, and that we'll be looking at it.
Yeah.
Close on what, Kim?
On the, we're
Yes.
close on the personnel
Oh, yeah.
policy. I think we should wrap it up in the next month. I'll send it around to you guys today.
Other business.
We didn't vote.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
Yes.
Heidi? Matt?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes. Oh, third. Other business. We neglected to vote on this last time. We discussed it, and so this is the resolution that we did not approve at our last meeting. Local law number 5 of 2021 taxation. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Round Lake proposed adoption of a local law amending Article 2 of Chapter 162, taxation of the Code of the Village of Round Lake, which amends would revise dates for the payment of taxes and rents, interest for late payments, and the turnover of unpaid taxes and rents to Saratoga County for re-levy. And whereas a public hearing on the proposed local law was held on the 17th day of November, 2021 at 6:45, at which time all persons wishing to be heard were heard. Now therefore, it is resolved that the Village Board of Trustees find that the proposed local law is a type 2 action pursuant to 6 NYCRR 617.5C, and accordingly, no further action is necessary to comply with the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And it is lastly resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Round Lake adopts local law number 5 and directs the village clerk to file the same with the New York Secretary of State. Moved by Mayor.
Second.
Discussion?
Vote, Tom?
Yeah.
Heidi? Yes. Matt?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Next was an email that Kim got regarding community room use and COVID precautions. And Kim, you want to follow up on that? It was concerning masking, changing our mask policy and occupancy policy, was it?
It was just the individual contacted the office and wanted to know if they were planning some events to have, individual events to be had in the room, and they were wondering what our capacity was. And I know that we had recently had trivia, and they had, I think, around 50, or max at 50 people. And I didn't know if that seemed like a good number of people in the room. I wasn't here to know whether that felt like they're comfortable with having people in the room. If we should require masks, if it was vaccine cards, how people felt about how we should move forward with that.
Shouldn't we just be following the New York State guidelines?
Well, as a basis, but then we can go beyond that if we really want to.
I mean, the number on our occupancy is what, 190 or something
Yeah.
crazy?
It's 150.
150, so.
Which seems crazy.
I was at the trivia, 950 seemed like a reasonable number.
Yeah, or the tables that are filled full.
Yeah. I agree.
At this point, I don't see a reason to change our masking policy, but monthly, I think we should revisit it at our first meeting every month, because it certainly could change.
What are we saying our mask policy is?
Not required if vaccinated.
Not required. That's it. So I'll tell them.
That's it for that topic for now. Under auditorium manager job description, a while ago, I passed around something called a global auditorium management job description. After Heidi and Matt met to discuss the auditorium use policy, I read through their draft and amended, shortened actually, the global auditorium use policy job description and turned it into a 2022 auditorium director job description. And that is, each of you has one. It's called it's called JDAUD. So that is basically the pared down version of the one you had about a month ago. And what I would like to do tonight is create a position of auditorium director to be appointed annually by the mayor and confirmed by the board. The appointment, either tonight or next meeting, will be temporary pending adoption of the auditorium use policy. And based on the draft job description finalized either tonight or next meeting. It's understood that the draft job description that you have in front of you will be reviewed and revised by the board following adoption of the auditorium use policy. So I submit that idea for discussion.
I thought we were gonna take that up after we develop the auditorium use policy. And
Right.
I also don't know that the director, if that's what we're gonna call it, is appointed by the mayor. There's a job description and a contract. And we were gonna advertise for a person in that position to discuss compensation, and a contract would be signed. So I don't know that that's an appointment by the mayor. Or, you know, the board may approve the contract, but I believe they have. We've talked about past auditorium manager contracts. But I think I don't think it's an appointment.
Well, I am proposing making it an appointment, creating a new.
Okay.
I'm sorry, are you appointing it
temporarily until it can be advertised and people submit applications for it, or?
That wasn't the intention, but the intention is, as I envisioned it, was we create the appointed position. Somebody would look at the job description. I would appoint somebody with the board's approval. They would look at the job description and say, oh, that sounds reasonable. The understanding is it's temporary because I can't envision this, but some changes to the auditorium use policy may go into effect that would totally derail that person's desire to do the job. I can't imagine that happening, but theoretically it's possible.
Would this be a prorated stipend then based on last year's, or would it be gratis until something is?
I think I would say gratis until either next meeting or the following meeting when we discuss finances.
And the idea would be just to take some of the work off of the clerk
Yes.
in the meantime.
So.
No, I've started a bunch of things I would gladly like to hand over to somebody. Based on some comments that Sharon made at the prior meeting. I've been in touch with Philip Morris. I got a meeting set up with him for next week for Proctor's and Cafe Lena. I've been talking to them about stuff. So, and there's things that I would like somebody more competent in this matter than I to take over.
Okay, so if we, just kind of working out the timeline here, plan is to go over the auditorium use policy at the next meeting. Hopefully, we can get everybody's input and approve that in the next couple of weeks. And then from there, within the next 30 days, I would assume that we could get a job description drafted, which would put us into the regular meeting in January. So if we were to put somebody in a temporary spot, it would be 5 or 6 weeks.
Yes, essentially, it's like an interim manager till it.
Well, this
We-
isn't suggesting interim. If we want to talk about an interim, that would be a different thing. This is, I'd like to create the position of the director to be appointed annually by the mayor and confirmed by the board.
The appointment will be temporary, which is,
Can we put a time frame on that then potentially where we could make a temporary appointment?
We just do have an interim appointment of an appointment of an interim auditorium director pending approval of.
it's essentially the same thing, it's different words.
Okay,
Yes.
for my education, I'm sorry, the appointed positions. I understand appointing an interim person because you don't have somebody to do it. It needs to get done. But once the job description's figured out, the use policy's figured out, is it then the intent to publicly, advertise for somebody to interview and fill this position, or is it then again still an appointment?
I would say it's an appointment, the way that I appoint the clerk, I appoint the attorney without job interviews, I appoint the treasurer without job interviews.
So
So it'd be
somebody's
similar to
just
that.
gonna Go, hey, I want to be auditorium director and come up and get appointed by, I'm just trying to understand the process of how you select the person to be appointed.
Years of wisdom and experience.
Well, traditionally, the board is appointed in, as a group.
The mayor appoints and the board approves. I mean, obviously you suggest people.
I still have a problem with the way this is worded. The auditorium director will oversee operations of the auditorium subject to direction from the mayor in consultation with the village officials. Quite honestly, I think it gives the mayor too much power.
Well,
I
let
think
me,
let me finish. I think the mayor, as part of the village board of trustees, should be making these determinations. I think the auditorium director should be reporting not to the mayor, who will then tell us what he or she thinks is the important aspect of a particular thing. The auditorium director should come before this board, everyone, or at least do a short report, everyone, that we could all look at in all meetings.
I believe that is in the job description, or it should have been. It was meant to be.
Well, I mean, it's still the mayor in consultation. It should
But-
be subject to direction from the village board of trustees of which you are.
Okay. Now, this is directly from the Nikon Bible that you all have copies of. The responsibility and power to supervise all subordinate village officers and employees is vested in the village mayor. While village trustees may need to observe village officers and employees in the exercising of their official duties, trustees should do so in a manner that does not interfere with those officers and employees' abilities to perform their duty. Trustees do not have the ability to direct employees. I mean, that's,
The auditorium director is not an employee.
if I'm signing a contract with that person, they're an employee. We're paying them, they're an employee. What person in this village do we pay that is not an employee?
Dan is a. not-
Yeah, Dan Pesca and the auditorium director manager have contracts.
They're not employees,
Not.
they're contracted, they contract.
Because as an employee, you're not paying insurance and taxes on them.
Anyway, it's just a contract to do
They're contracted vendor.
That's why we have contracts with them. Before the board.
Yeah. I guess the question would be if they became an appointment. I think it would still be a contract. I think my personal preference with this is I think if there's somebody that's interested in doing this in the interim, that we create and that we have them do it in the interim for a couple of months and then iron out this job description in the meantime and use policy. Gives us another 60 days to do that. And we can tweak some of the words in there.
I mean, I really do feel the trustees have as much a responsibility to running, funding, otherwise taking care of the auditorium as anybody else. And as a group, we should be making a decision. I want all the information that the mayor, which I would have doubted.
You don't get enough emails from me, Tim? Is
Is
that what you're telling me?
Your second to last bullet point there does say communicate with the village board monthly, either in person or through liaison. So I think that's it.
And I think the thing with, I think with reporting to Gary, I mean, there's the day-to-day stuff. We meet twice a month, but if something comes up for an event that's happening over the weekend and they need direction, do they have time to wait for all of us to get emails, respond, and make a timely decision? So the direction from one individual goes.
I would hope that whatever happens at the auditorium doesn't happen 2 days before we get one.
No, planned events, I totally agree. Planned events, the schedule that's coming up, what the director is going to be doing with the events and the advertising, things that can be discussed and done. But if something, things happen. Things happen every day.
Yeah, sometimes
The
things
direction
happen
is needed.
and the wrong.
And we're talking about small things, anything major, yes.
Who's unlocking the auditorium?
Right, they can't be there at 3 o'clock.
Somebody couldn't be there and somebody came at 2, and what could you do?
Right.
Call in was what they happened for Gary, to say, could you pinch it? That has
I
happened in the
understand.
past.
The auditorium directors have some autonomy here. They're not going to see the trustees or the mayors or whoever's in for every single little item. That's the, I think the point of it is that they're going to have a level of autonomy to oversee it. And then, if there's additional direction the board wants them to take, then we take that as appropriate. But
Well, I would hope that the mayor doesn't give his approval, or her approval, to something that happens at the auditorium, and then only find out that the village board a week or 2 later, well, that was inappropriate, or would have liked to have discussed that further.
Yeah, that is part of what we're, the draft that we're going to look at in the coming, week or 2. But there's a clear, chain of command, who has to approve, who do we talk to, when does it come before the board, et cetera. Should be.
I understand we're tweaking
Tom, were
things.
you talking about the description or
I don't know.
my proposal?
I don't know.
I got lost.
I'm talking about JDAUD.
Okay,
That's the one I had.
okay, and what was it again? Because we can
Well,
change, we
I'm-
can change the wording. I'm not
No,
married
don't
to.
worry about it.
any of this.
As long as we're gonna have a further discussion on this. I'm
Yeah, but
good
this
with
is,
it.
as I say, this is the
okay.
draft,
Yeah. I just-
subject to
Well,
revision.
It says though that it's about the position, and I don't think it's semantics. It said that you're going to be appointing it annually, but then you say this is just temporary. So
No, the appointment tonight is temporary.
Okay, well, then we don't need the first sentence because we're still figuring out what's going to happen with the position of the auditorium director. So if you want to say, get rid of the first sentence and say, the appointment.
Wait, you're back
temporary
to-
appointment of an interim auditorium director pending adoption of the policy You know, I think we can all agree that we would want to hold stuff up if things are, if somebody would like to do that
So
without compensation until we figure this out.
so you're agreeing with this, but just want different words?
No, I'll edit it for you if you'd like. I would say that, that you would like to appoint an auditorium director. So the mayor would like to appoint an auditorium director, an interim auditorium director, pending adoption of based on the, I know you mean based on the draft, because we haven't really seen that. Pending adoption of the auditorium use policy. And auditorium director job description.
Yeah.
So I could read that back.
So basically, you're saying that you're cutting out the appointed annually by the mayor and confirmed by the board.
Right, and and based on the draft job description, I'm taking out that too, and that understood that it would be reviewed and revised following the draft. Just saying, what you want to do, I think, is adopt an interim, is appoint an interim director because there's things going on that need immediate attention.
Yes.
So we're saying, what I'm saying is, let's give you that, and the rest of it we'll figure it out later.
Pending the adoption of the auditorium use policy and
So the
finalization of the.
the mayor, you know, allowing the mayor to, I could make a motion to allow the mayor to appoint an interim auditorium director pending the adoption of the auditorium use policy. Do you want to set a time frame for?
I would say, yeah, I would like to by the end of February. That is finalized. I think that's a reasonable time.
It's a long time to ask somebody to work for nothing.
That's true too, but if we looked at the, I mean, if we looked at the timeline, we'd have to agree with the, I mean, we could do it sooner than that, obviously, but we don't want it to drag on. The whole point of having a deadline would be to have it done by then at the latest. If we can do it earlier, then that would be great. I'd like to do it earlier.
And if my memory serves me correctly, it's not a monthly payment, it's kind of a lump sum.
Correct.
So the same lump sum could be whatever is agreed upon.
Well, why does it have to be a lump sum? I mean.
It doesn't, but that's the way we have done it.
Yeah, you could pay an interim. You could establish a salary for a director.
Yeah.
Pay the interim monthly. And then when you get a director, you get rid of the interim. And then you put the permanent director in.
So I have the authority to appoint an interim director without knowing how much he or she will be
Well,
paid or what the
that's
job
not the way
description is.
We're gonna decide.
Yeah, because they're not permanent.
They're
They're
not
going to do
permanent.
it for a few weeks. And if we would like to, if we're concerned about having it drag on forever, first of all, we could say, I'm done. I don't want to be an interim director anymore. And second, we could, you know, come up with a monthly stipend.
What was the former? Yeah.
Depends on which year.
It
you're
was
talking
split
about.
between two managers.
Yeah. It was.
The most it was ever, as I recall, was $5,000.
Yes.
Adrian?
Huh?
I think Adrian was 4.
4?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, 4.
Adrian was the highest.
and that was split between two
No, it wasn't.
managers.
Not in the beginning, only
Not in the
last year.
beginning,
Only
last
last
year.
year.
Yeah.
Last year it was,
Yeah.
because I signed two contracts. I know it was split. So that was a motion?
Yeah, do you want to read it? Yes, do you want me to, do you want to
Uh,
talk about the verbiage?
Just say it one more time. I think I got it, but just, yeah.
Make a motion to allow the mayor to appoint an interim auditorium director, pending adoption of auditorium use policy and auditorium director job description. Do we want to add anything about money or time frame, or just let it go with that?
What happens if the interim works for a couple of months? And then becomes the permanent? Do we back pay them?
Well, that was my point about raising the lump sum issue, that would address that if there was a lump sum in March.
I hate to have somebody who's just,
No, that's silly.
you know, especially somebody who, I mean, we have paid employees, we have volunteers. And whatnot.
Prorated if you work around 300 a month.
Well, why don't we just say 300
Yeah.
a month until the auditorium director has been, finalized the contract, whatever.
And we say the month begins on the first.
Today's the first.
Yeah, as of today.
So if you,
appoint somebody
if
today-
you appoint somebody today, they get paid from today. Or if they get paid from the first inning, what's the parable?
Kim, you getting all this?
God saying.
You recording about
it?
He works for somebody else. They don't get the same.
Whatever.
So at $300.
At 300, at least
Wow.
now.
Yeah, we have 300 months.
Beginning the first of December, if you appoint somebody next week or tomorrow, they get paid from the first.
And,
And I think that is deadline for getting the,
If they're being paid, I
yeah,
don't think we have to kill ourselves with a deadline.
the whole idea is
We wanna
we want to get it done as soon as
season.
possible.
I know,
I
I
just,
know,
yeah,
Right, as long as they're being paid and providing the service.
I just know sometimes if we don't put deadlines on things, things can get left. I think we're all very motivated to get this done, so.
What guidelines will an interim follow pending a job description and policy? The existing.
The
guidelines
draft. Yeah.
Or the draft? You wanna-
The existing
We don't
is,
have to the rental policy.
We don't
have
have
a
the
use
rental
policy.
policy.
we don't have a job description. Wait, I didn't understand your question.
Well, I guess I was gonna say, if you appointed somebody, we have the rental policy. We don't have a use policy.
Nobody's going to be using it for 5 months anyway,
That's
so
great.
we got time there. Although we did have a request for a wedding and wet baby shower in February.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be.
Yeah.
They're all there. Yeah,
I said, that.
You said what?
sure,
I thought we agreed.
poor babies.
Hopefully,
you have a second?
you go.
One second.
Oh, I did. Yes, second. I can use my outside voice.
Discussion?
Sausage is made.
You don't wanna know how.
Tom?
Yes.
I-
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And having done that, I hereby appoint Sharon Walsh, Auditorium Director, after watching the sausage being made. She is still interested.
Congratulations.
Yes.
I haven't heard her say yes yet.
I'd love to see the job.
You don't wanna
We
say
don't have one
that.
yet. I don't have one.
This is the draft. you will do.
Sharon, you're on the village board, you know how much trouble.
And I was the auditorium liaison for 2 years, so.
Okay. You can put in your 30 days notice now.
And still get paid. Okay,
Is that appointment confirmed by the board?
oh, yes,
I'll make a
thank you.
motion to confirm that
Second.
appointment.
Discussion?
Second, Tom?
Heard before she reads it.
Yes.
Aye.
Or
Aye.
Put her on there, but she wants to be fine.
While we're on this topic, I would like to make a motion to create the position of auditorium director to be appointed annually by the mayor and confirmed by the board starting in December 2022.
Gary, we just said we're gonna do stuff after we do this policy. We're not
I'm-
prepared.
If there's not a second, don't second it, but I'm making that motion for December 2022. Same, I would like to create the position of an auditorium director to be appointed annually by the mayor and confirmed by the board, starting at our next organizational meeting in December of 2022. And I might not even be mayor, so. Hearing no second. We move on. And the Ballston Spa Fire Contract. Tom, you want to take that? You all received copies of the last year's Ballston Spa Fire Contract, this year's proposed, not Ballston Spa, Town of Ballston Fire Contract, and the Town of Malta contract for reference. Tom and I met this afternoon, and we met with Frank also. Tom, did you want to go over your suggestions?
Yes. You turn to the second page of the proposed contract. There's a section, payment and responsibilities, takes up most of the page. That replaces a single paragraph that we had in the existing contract. The existing contract provided that whatever fire protection tax the people in the town of Ballston pay gets paid over to the village. And that money is used for fire protection services, and that has worked well. It's in effect now. And that was 67 cents per thousand at the time it was entered into. I think that amount has since been raised. The tax has gone up in Ballston, and we are receiving what we're supposed to receive, which is a higher amount. This contract provides for 70 cents per thousand. It doesn't say anything about tracking what the taxes are in that portion of the town that receives fire protection from us. So I'd like to add something that says 70 cents per dollar, or such other and higher amount as may be charged for fire protection services by the town of Malta, town of Ballston within that district. The under paragraph 1A, there's another provision that payments are to be made in 2 equal installments. As Frank pointed out, that money comes in at the end of January, beginning of February, and there's no need to wait to make the second installment, and sometimes that can pinch the fire protection coffers. So we're going to propose, or I recommend that we propose making one payment, which is the one on the 1st of April. The 1B provides that the money paid shall be exclusively used for fire protection costs. And we're going to add a phrase, all expenses associated with the operation of the Round Lake Fire Department and or Round Lake Hose Company, so that we can make sure that the rent that comes out of our fire protection budget is a legitimate expense. The C and D provide for record keeping requirements for us to provide information to the town of Ballston. That wasn't in the existing, or isn't in the existing contract. And it just adds to our burdens. Right now, there is an audit that's done at the end of the year by the village. And a section of that audit is for fire protection. And that's what we send up to town of Malta. And so what I would like to do is to send that on to Ballston as well. And then if they want a copy of our budget, or budget reconciliation and so forth, those are all public records. If they ask for them, they can have them. I don't want an affirmative obligation to provide documentation that's in the public domain and have us forget about it and unintentionally breach the contract. Lastly, in 1C, it provides all sums paid shall be deposited into a separate account, which is a similar provision of the Malta contract, but that isn't done now. It goes to a separate line item, but it's within the same, the general fund. So I want to make that clarification. And again, if they want to see where that money goes, it's all public record. Let's see.
Is there? a
And that's
particular-
it. Those are the changes that I'd like to make. So what I would, if the board is happy with those, what I see is pretty common sense changes. I'd like the authority to send back a draft with those changes, working with Frank and the mayor. Send that over to their attorney with, red line changes and see how we do.
Is there a particular reason why they had suggested paying twice a year when they receive the funds once a year? What would be their motivation behind doing
I don't know.
Ease their
Maybe they
cash
want to
flow,
hold on to
maybe.
money so they can invest it.
that? Yeah, okay.
I don't know, but I mean, there's no,
Yeah.
given the type of investments the municipality can make,
wouldn't be a
the
terrific-
interest income on one half of those sums is going to be not worth the effort.
Yeah, right, okay.
I
Just
don't know.
curious. Okay.
Tom, for 1D, where they talk about, after the end of the fiscal year, providing all of that information that says, should the town fail to receive it, what is the time frame for having to supply that before it's deemed not received?
Well, I think the timeframe is that essentially they'd be making a FOIL request, which means we've got to get back to them within 5 days to let them know when they're going to get it, and we have to provide it in a reasonable time, which is probably going to be a week or two. So the time frame to turn that over is counted in a couple of weeks.
But 1D is not a request, it just says the village will provide. I'm not familiar with FOIL.
And I'm suggesting that
But it's not a request, it's saying we will give this to them routinely.
that we say that if you ask for it, we'll give it to you, but I don't want an affirmative obligation. One more burden to put on our,
He's saying we want to change
Wants
it,
to change it to that.
wants to change it.
Upon request? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that
Yes.
part. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't catch that.
it's like up in C above where it talks about a detail or blah, 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 upon request from the town. I don't want to accidentally breach the contract.
She generally has the audit done, the year ends May 31st, she's generally done by July 1st. I mean, that's been suitable with the town.
And also, do we want to have a 1-year contract or 2 or 3?
Given the growth and the change in everything,
Especially Boston, their growth was 17%.
I think that's why we've had 3-year contracts. That's why we talked with them this year. And I don't remember us saying we only wanted 1 year, but I think they went for the 1 year because it would allow for the growth over the next couple.
What do you recommend?
I would say this one, go with a 1, and then we'll see if, how they are next year, and then maybe we can marry it up to Malta so that they both end at the same time.
Does the board want to do that?
Motion? Or,
The 67 cents a thousand was the rate for the current. They're proposing,
Aren't they paying 7?
Right now, they're paying, the year we're in currently is 67 cents.
okay,
We met with them, they agreed to raise it for next year to 70 cents.
for 70 cents, but it could go higher. They don't know that yet.
Well, we're gonna get 70 cents. We're trying to, as time goes on, raise it up. They have 4 different districts in the town of Boston. We're currently the lowest. So we're trying to get that cents per thousand comparable to the other 2 districts.
But we wouldn't. If
They're gonna collect 70 cents a thousand.
If they decided in the future, while this contract was still in effect, they were going to collect more than 70 cents per thousand, would we get that difference?
they wouldn't do it mid-year.
I don't, well, if you look at their budget that they just posted, just like, everybody else posted their budgets, it's in there at 70 cents per thousand until the end of their fiscal year.
And their fiscal year is the end.
Annual.
There's annual, so.
Theirs is
that's
annual.
December.
I guess that's kind of what I was trying to get at.
I don't know, can they change it?
Everything overlaps.
Yeah, you're saying could they change it
Could
between
they-
January and June 22?
Because the town is the same way, it goes from January to December, and they always set their rate, and that's where it always stays at.
Okay.
But let me jump in here. There's a provision in here, as we have in our existing contract, which says if they don't cancel by November 15, then the terms of the contract apply to the following year. And all of our obligations roll over year by year. So that's why I want to put that provision back in that says that if they collect more than 70 cents per thousand, they will pay that over to us.
I mean, it would be nice. We basically.
Yeah, if they do.
Plead for 70. but we
And
got 70.
yes, I would like a resolution authorizing us to put that together and ship it to the Boston attorney.
I'll make a motion that we put all that information together
And ship it to.
and ship it. Right, and the matter approved by the mayor and the village attorney. And if they, Boston. Anxiously wait.
I'll second. Second.
Discussion?
So was the resolution that Tom will send a draft, with the board's blessing to the town's attorney?
The board is authorizing me in consultation with Frank and Gary to put together a proposed provision and ship that over to Boston's attorney.
Okay, Tom,
Just-
Matt,
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes. Next, we go to public comment.
I'd like to thank the board and the mayor for pushing the issue of having a director to go forward for next year, 2022 season. I think that the community was asking for it and you guys came through, push it through. Glad to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Tom, discussion, all in favor? Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
53 minutes, not bad. Okay.